Hi, I'm Danya,
And I'm Shaheen.
and you're listening to or watching.
Reality Woo Woo.
It's not something to believe in.
It's just something to talk about.
And on today's episode, we've we've been missing. We've been missing for about 9 months now. And so we are actually back with a new format which we're really
We're
excited
back.
about. It's called the Solstice Series, and we are going to be interviewing a series of our favorite creatives about our two favorite things, creativity and astrology. And on today's episode, we have Theresa Won Kress on. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hi, thank you so
Welcome.
much for having me. I'm good. I'm really glad to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here. Teresa is an indie film producer and writer and has her own media company called One Way Media. And so yeah, we're excited to have you here, and will you tell us a little bit more about like what you make in your day-to-day?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it really runs the gamut. It's all storytelling, and it really comes down to creative. But I'm an independent film producer and writer, and I have my own producing consulting banner. Thanks for the shout out to One Way Media. And so through that banner, I work with a lot of writers, very hands on, to offer story consulting, script coverage, really helping getting projects in the best shape possible, and working with novelists and manuscripts and pretty much at every stage of ideation and creation and development, um, with writers. And then also, I manage my own slate of projects, which is just ideating and developing and creating original IP and working with, again, other writers, other producers, other partners to then partner up with studios, and buyers to sell projects to be adapted for cross media purposes.
As though it weren't obvious from you saying all of that, Teresa is also an earth sign. We have
I was just
this.
thinking, yes.
This is an earth sign trifecta that we have going on today. You have our Taurus with Shaheen, you have me, the Virgo, and then Teresa is a Capricorn, which makes sense why you're able to create structure and guide like 20 things at once. Makes a lot of sense. Um, what, kind of just talking about astrology for a second, has astrology always been a part of your life or something that you've thought about? Is it like something you grew up with, or is it something maybe that's just gotten a little more into your sphere of being the last few years?
I think I've always been into astrology. I mean, I grew up in LA, so I feel like you kind of can't escape it.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Lifelong
yeah,
woo
it's
woo.
something
Yeah.
that I've always been really into, but more so, like horoscopes,
Mm,
and just kind of like more like basic astrology. And I
yeah.
think it's really in the last few years, as I've kind of gone on my own journey of self discovery, where it's really made a big difference, and it's really informed, so much of my journey with identity and creativity. Because
Hmm.
really funny story, I thought I was a Capricorn in all my big three, and then found out recently that I'm actually Aquarius as my rising. So that's really been a big
Mm,
game changer of just trying to
Yeah.
figure out like, okay, I can actually give myself more permission here to be a little funky, to be a little weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm always trying to analyze people's signs. Like I'm usually right. Like I can guess.
That's our
mm.
favorite, Shaheen
I'm,
and mine's favorite party trick.
yeah.
We
Yeah,
love
but
just
It's
like
fun when we're together, but I
staring
suck at
at
doing it
someone.
it's
alone.
being like an FBI profiler, where I'm
It
like,
truly
Yeah.
this is
is.
a dossier, like this is everything. So I love to just have fun with it, and it also really informs my writing and just working with other creatives. But yeah, I think it's a really important piece.
Yeah. Yeah. Sitting with kind of the cycles of it, actually. That's something I wanted to talk about is that I guess similar for me, and Shaheen, you let me know about how this kind of plays into your creativity too, of like over time now I kind of trust the cycle of creativity a bit more because I see so many reflections in the astrological calendar in different seasons that we're moving through. And so when I feel a little more like stagnant, it makes sense. I start to kind of like
Mm,
look at the themes and see that. And
hmm.
even with this podcast, like we're recording during Mercury retrograde, of course, and it makes sense to revisit a creative project during that time. People think like, oh,
Yeah.
you don't want to like visit anything from the past, but you kind of do want to revisit certain things from the past, things that you have like a little more control over, but there's going to be
Right.
tech
That's like
issues.
That's like the positive spin on like things that go bad during retrogrades. It's actually just a time to look back and
Yeah.
reevaluate and reestablish things and rethink things. It's a
Yeah.
time,
You can revisit
re-retrograde.
with like a fresh
Yeah.
attitude.
And
Um,
Teresa, I like what you said about you're just making me think about like how astrology, I feel it gives. I never really, I mean, I like looking into horoscopes, but sometimes I feel like it blocks my view of what I want to do on a daily basis. So I try to not look at it as much lately, but I've
yeah.
always loved the personality attribute side of it. And you saying that you thought you were a Capricorn, 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 like your top three, but finding out that you were an Aquarius, that I don't know if that was like existential crisis or if it allowed you like permission to be a new way, or find new versions of yourself through that. So that's why I like it.
Yeah. Do you actually, kind of sitting on that, Teresa, do you check your horoscope still? Like, is that still something that you look at?
I try not to check it like regularly. You know, I have Channy, I have CoStar, so
Yeah.
those are kind of my go-tos. But even then, I have to take breaks from it because I
Yeah.
can get like super immersed. And again, you know, I'm a Capricorn, so like so perfectionistic, want to do everything very well. I
Yeah.
want to succeed. So even with the horoscopes, it's like I can get very antagonistic about it. You
Mm.
know, of like, no, like I'm going to do it this way, and that's when I'm like, I got to take myself out because at the end of the day, this is for fun. Like this
Yeah.
is for fun. It's
Yeah,
not meant to be a life sentence, you know, or
it's
doom.
something to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah. So
Something to talk about. Yeah. 100. Yeah. That's same. I do read them all every day, but yeah, I do start to feel, I feel that like resentment start to creep up when it's like everything should be great. And if everything's not going great, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? What am
Yeah,
I?
what is there? What reasons are there out there for me to be feeling this and doing
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
I've actually been getting more into the birth charts, and that's been like the
Mm-hmm.
deep
Mm,
dive, you know, and that's really been
yeah.
opening up so much more and trying to figure out like geometry and math,
Mm.
like all the things that, you know, in school I was like, we don't need this. And now I'm like, oh my God, like where's my protractor? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
what is this exact degree?
What are the
Yeah.
degrees?
Oh, you're
Yeah.
into
Fun, fun.
degrees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
I find that we talk about it on this podcast, is that like I pick like a new thing to be interested in about astrology. And like, it was like, oh, my own sign and my family's signs growing up. And then moved to the birth chart. And then I was very committed to learning what the houses were for a second there. And then
mhm.
over the last year, and I think it's Channy that has that influence, is like, oh, I'm trying to understand what squares are and trines and
Yeah, the
sextiles and
bigger
like
stuff. Yeah.
all those layers to it, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, that's geometry. I don't want it to be a part of my life,
Yeah.
but I guess
Well,
it
I am
is.
curious too, because Teresa, you have a moon and sun in Capricorn, and if they were conjunct, that would mean even more like alignment between your emotions and the way that you are as a whole. So all of those little degrees matter.
Right. And
The
you know, everyone thinks
nuances.
everyone thinks Capricorn has no emotions. So it's been a wild ride of just trying to figure out like attuning to my
Yeah.
own
Mm,
feelings and
Yeah.
allowing
understanding.
the feelings to be felt. And
And
again,
recognizing them as that, as like, oh,
right.
this is
Yeah.
this sensation is a feeling.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
not all irritated, because that's my prevailing feeling
Do you
is,
know?
go ahead.
Do you know where your Venus is, or your Mars? Or have you been going
Oh
deeper
yeah.
into the farther planets?
I mean, so I love my Venus because my Venus is in Scorpio, and that is
Mm,
very reflective
Mm,
of how I am in my
that's fun.
relationships. I think that
Mm.
explains like the intensity and the
mm,
Hmm.
all-consuming and the I own you, you
yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Possessiveness. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really just, you know, it's really just thinking like I really know. And
Yes.
Hmm.
it's very seductive. It's like a very seductive energy. So I think it balances out this very like responsible, you know, just trying to do
Hmm.
everything like very efficiently and be very productive and useful. So I have fun with my Venus.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I love that. Well, and
Yeah.
now you're having a little more fun with your rising sign. Like you're allowing that to allow you to be a little bit weirder and more expressive, and also, I mean, that's the thing I admire greatly about Aquarius is like Yeah, they're less concerned with like the here and now and more about like what could be and how it could be great.
For the
Which is
whole of
always,
humanity more
yeah,
than just
for,
themselves.
yeah. And you were saying you're getting really into birth charts. Your son is a Cancer, right? So how is that, does that affect your, I always say that like parenting is a creative project. Like it is the most basic of like you are a creator and you're making this thing. So does that play into how you parent your son at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So he is also an Aries moon, and then he's
Oh,
an Aquarius rising as well. So I'm really glad that I figured out my rising. And that did happen when I was about to give birth to him, where my dad sent me a snapshot of like my announcement, and my mom had had the time off by like 30 minutes. And you know that
which makes a
as we now
difference.
see,
Yeah.
it makes
Changes
a huge
things, yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
So giving myself that permission to like play and not have a schedule and have large swaths of like unstructured free time, which when I was like very Capricorn, that was unheard of. And now
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is why like that it would lead to, the burnout. It would lead to
Hmm.
feeling so stressed. It's like, no, I need to have like that light as air sort of feeling too.
Yeah,
And,
you have to
he's
have the
2 years
moments
old.
of play.
Yeah. So we get to practice playing a lot. And the Cancer, it's just really interesting because my husband's a Cancer, but he's a July Cancer. And then my son is a June Cancer. And I'm really seeing there's a
The
difference.
difference.
Like
There
Yeah.
there's a
is,
big
yeah.
difference, you
June
know?
cancers are like the emotional ones.
Hmm.
July cancers are really fiery emotional though. They're like more like
Yeah.
extreme and I don't know, theatrical, I'd say.
They're all dramatic, Let's
Yeah.
just be real.
No,
It's a
it's
lot.
true.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of that. Yeah, because I think I've worked my way through like each zodiac sign where I've had like a group of friends who all identified as one sign, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden
Mm.
I'd be going through things with them, and I really got to know each sign, like the
Mm.
healed part and like the wounded parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I think it's been fascinating how it happens. Where I'm like, what's the attraction here?
Yeah. Yeah,
Really,
and the phases of your life, like what part of you is responding to that, or even like
Yeah.
potentially admires again, like part maybe the wounded or maybe the healed part. Like there's something that you're responding to in that.
yeah, and I love that about astrology. Like I love the polarity, and the
Hmm.
duality of it, and also then how you take it from yourself and then in relationships. Like I love that piece of it too.
Yeah, and cancers are your polarity. So that makes
Yeah.
so yeah, I have a new person that I freelance for and she's a Pisces and I just figured that out the other day and I was having that's my opposite. And I was saying I love working with Pisces in terms of creating things because I fully understand and give structure to that over emotional state. And I imagine that's a similar kind of vibe that you have with like the Cancer energy within your home of like you bring some structure to the emotions, but they also remind you to feel your emotions, which is important.
Yeah. And then there's a
Right.
big
There's a
nurturing
balance.
component, right? Whereas can't
Hmm.
like Capricorn sometimes again, I'm like, I don't have feelings right now. Like it's not personal. That's just not where I'm living. I've got
Yeah.
like 40 mountains to climb. Like she's building her
Mhm.
empire,
Yeah.
we're busy.
She's in the middle of something.
So kind of
Is this
having
important
that.
right now?
Yeah.
I ask that question aloud a lot. Like, is
Right
it,
now.
am I going to be mad if I walk over there right now and look at the thing that you're asking me to look at? I like preempt it a lot. Is this going to piss me off? No, I promise it's worth it. Okay.
I mean,
I
protecting your
guess I'll
time and
come see.
energy is very real
Yeah.
as a creative, as working for yourself or running your own company. And then for me, like being a parent as well, like having to really suss that out has been super, super important.
Yeah. How do you I'm interested in that. Like I do want to talk a little bit more about running your own company and how do you stay engaged with other creatives? Do you co-work with folks? I know you mentor people through their own writing projects and all of that. Yeah, I'm just curious of how you work with that flow and stay plugged in with other folks.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think part of the astrology and part of the self discovery has been finding different groups of people to go to for different needs. Like one
Mhm.
part of me really identifies and presents as an executive, right? Within like the
Mhm.
Hollywood ecosystem. And that's development executives, that's your studio executives. Those are the people who are greenlighting projects and who are making the decisions. So I have a big network there because that's where I started out as. But
Yeah.
now that I've become I've been really exploring my own creativity as a writer and kind of doing the deep dives, into my own art. I've been finding a completely different group of people who are more like the bohemians, like the artists. And that's definitely, I think, more my Aquarius side. And so I kind of have it, where I have like the Capricorns of like, I've got my girl bosses and I've got like the executives and I'm part of those organizations. And I love the women that I've really become close to who are all killing it, in different ways. Yeah. And then I love being with my writers where it's very safe. It's very, very safe. And that's been really huge, I think, as both being the executive, being the producer, and also being the creative, of learning how to really like create that feeling of safety for myself, and then it's like you can go off on all cylinders. And then, just working with writers who are maybe greener or merging and like they're so excited and so hungry and really just trying to offer some guidance in a really holistic fashion of bringing this like 360 degree, array of experience that I have, but also really being able to speak creative and understanding like how personal it feels, like how vulnerable it can be. I think it's really just a very different way of interacting and treating people. And part of it is that I have to have that for myself. Like I have to have both.
No one's going to do it for you. No one's going to be like, hey, Theresa, you've been a little irritable or a little burnt out lately. Maybe you need to go hang out with your like artsy friends to like,
like I know, like I just know, I know the flow, I know the rhythm. And I just know that I need all of it now, because before I used to think it was like, I have to be type A. And now it's like, no, like I'm human. You're allowed to be whatever.
Yeah, it's the fact that you just said you're human. That's something I've been sitting with a lot lately, is like whenever I go to like yoga.
You've literally been saying that.
I've been saying I'm a human. I'm a human. It's like I have to remind myself like I'm here. It's okay for me to be messy. It's okay for me to allow the strategy to unfold. I don't have to think about every single step of the process. And from a creative standpoint, and I think even to what you're saying, Theresa, about, you come from girl boss, executive, fully same. That is my past. But then my future is it's thinking of myself as a creative that has allowed me to play in this space of like, I used to just say, well, I'm a writer, but now I'm like, no, I'm a creative. Like I create things from nothing, from ideas, from conversation, and I need to allow that to unfold. But
not
it is
to make
like
everything, not to make everything about Beyonce, but you're saying all this stuff about girl boss and everything goes back to her. And she's a Virgo too. And she wanted to release Cowboy Carter before Renaissance, but recently she stated in a thing that's reminding me of what you're saying that she wanted to release it first, but she had to trust God's plan and just keep it on hold for 5 years. And I mean, that's a long-term version of what we're talking about, but
it is though.
Things need to be on their level, on their own time frame sometimes.
I'm curious, and you were saying that you're just closer to the feeling of note, like you notice like, okay, now's time for this or now's time for that. What do you have you found that it evolves like over time? Because I do find like mechanisms that where it was like, oh, I need to go on a walk and meditate in this order or whatever, like 6 months later that formula no longer works for me and I have to like tinker with it a little bit. Do you find that you have cycles like that?
Yeah, I'm constantly experimenting. Like I'm constantly going into the lab and playing around and messing around with a bunch of different things. But the things that don't change, I think, are like offering myself rituals throughout the day. And it doesn't have to be like at this time of the day, we're only doing this. And then we have to do this and this and this. Like that just doesn't work for me anymore. And I think that's how a lot of us are conditioned growing up. Like that's how you're supposed to work. But again, it's really been like that play, piece of it. Of just giving myself the permission to be like, just do you today, because there are days where I'll wake up and I'm like, I could send off like 500 emails, no problem. Right. And then there are other days where I'm like, I can't, like, I can barely formulate a sentence and I don't want to talk to people today. That's the beauty of running my own business and being able to work for myself, is really being able to pick and choose. But walks, are non-negotiable for the most part, even when it's like playing. I'm the crazy person out there, like with my umbrella, like being blown away.
Go get some air.
But part of, I think, kind of getting back into that like inner rhythm that we were talking about and referencing Beyonce of it all, which I love, is also learning to wait out, like when it's super windy, because like 20
Yeah.
minutes later, there's no more wind. And then I'm not going to be dealing with allergies and feeling sick, you know? So yeah, really learning to get out of my own way. And part of that is, I think, just is having some of those rituals. Like I love drinking tea.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
It sounds
Yeah.
like you're integrating too. It's not, you're saying these things like get out of my own way, but you're actually kind of allowing this other part of you to play in the middle of stuff. Like you have to have a walk, you got to have tea, you're saying. I've been trying to get bonsais going, like plants and stuff that are just outside. And like in the middle of the day, I'll have tons to do, but I'll just walk outside and cut some stuff for like 15 minutes instead of like making it a, like we've been conditioned, like you said, like we have school and then we have recess and then we leave home or whatever the
Yeah.
constructs are.
Yeah. I find like the connectivity, you know, I'm lucky in that my mom is also an entrepreneur. And so while we both have sometimes like on the weekends we're both like booked and blessed and busy and hanging out with friends, but we'll be like, oh, it's Wednesday afternoon and we both run our own company. So I guess we should hang out now. Like we can find moments during the week, which is nice. It's a new feeling to explore. I'm curious, is there anything that you're like obsessed with from a content standpoint right now? Because I feel like that's something I've been because I do feel like rhythm wise, winter is not for me. I mean, you may feel different. I don't know if you thrive in the winter because it's like your birth
Yeah, with all
month
of
and
your
with the Aquarius, yeah,
wintry
your
signs.
heavy winter months. Like I feel like I'm like so dormant. So I feel like I've been doing so many museums lately. Like I've been trying to really take in a lot of art lately because it just sparks and gets me really excited. But yeah, I'm curious if there's anything that you're consuming right now or metabolizing in, you know, in your own creative process or just shit you love scrolling through. I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think winter's hard just in terms of mental health with like it being dark, but I do love to go inward. Like
Yeah.
I crave solitude, and that's
Yeah.
kind of when I incubate and like all the stuff comes up, and then I can share it, you know, and language it in ways that make sense. And part of that I think is consuming and feeding myself content that really gets my brain going and also like offers my nervous system that feeling of safety. So it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like I can't do overstimulation anymore. You know, I don't know how I used to go out to clubs and like dance and have bright lights. And it's like, I'm going to do this forever. And now I'm like, I need to be home at like 8. And
You
I need
know,
my
that makes me laugh so much. I went to a show in January and I this is like a tip that more people need to hear. So I want to say it here is my fix for that has been I go to shows for an artist that has one album because it starts at 9:30 and I am in my bed by 11:15 because it's like they can't play more than 30 minutes and then you're out and I still got my like outfit on and I still feel like I'm hip and young, but then I get to go home. That's really, but it's not just us. I really found that it's fun integrating with Gen Z out in spaces because like I had at that same show there was a couple Gen Z kids in front of me and they could not handle how loud it was. To your point, Theresa, like they were freaking out about the loud. They left. They were literally
They're
like
not
telling
used
each
to
other
being
they're
in big
not used
public
to
spaces with so
hearing
many
music
people.
like that and being around that many people and I'm like, yeah, makes sense to me, man. Like it's weird that we do it this way. Yeah.
No, we millennials think that we need to suffer, you know, in order for
We
something.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're just used to it. But I love knowing that there are options. Like I went to go see The Lion King, you know, that I'd seen as a kid, and then I went out as an adult, and there were all these little Gen Zers with their, you know, their headphones, and I'm like, wow, way to take care of yourself and way to not
Yeah.
feel bad about it, you know, in a public setting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, in terms of content, I also love art. Like I grew up going to museums all over the world, so that's always been a really big piece of my journey.
Yeah.
Like I just went to the Norton Simon and was just reminded of like I love Picasso, I love Matisse, you know, I love like
Yeah.
sort of those oil paintings and sculptures and
You're speaking
body.
Shaheen's language. He went,
I know. I'm like, I need to go
art
somewhere
school over here.
physically.
I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Because you can see it online, but like going there physically is so different too.
It is different, and you know, I think I'd forgotten about that because I'd gone to so many museums growing up, and I was a kid, so I was like, this is kind of boring. But now I'm on Pinterest all the time, and that's where I'm finding
Right.
artists that I'm really excited about, or rediscovering
Yeah.
people that I've loved for a long time. And then going in person again, I was like, oh, holy shit. Like, yeah, you have to do things in person. Like, it's just a different experience, like the layers of it. And then again, like, I think I have this really poppy fun side that also loves K-dramas. Like, that's what I'm into.
Okay.
I love the conflict. I just love the drama of it all. It's always
K-drama is Korean drama. Is that what that is?
Korean dramas.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure.
Shaheen and I have a girlfriend in common. She's a Libra. She was learning Korean because that's how much she was like, it started with being a big BTS fan. And then she got really into the K-dramas. And it was the same thing. She was like, yeah, she was like, I got to learn. She's Filipino. What?
It's pretty wild how popular it's gone in. Like, I think that's really just globalized.
I love it. Yeah, it was Netflix had to go dominate other lands, so we're getting so much more exposure to international content, and I think it's great. Have either of you seen the 3 Body Problem?
No, I'm interested.
No, I started it, but I haven't been like gotten into it. I started it and I was like, oh no, subtitles. I have to give this like attention, and I wasn't ready for that at the time.
You weren't prepared to read.
Yeah. But I hear about it, and I have a feeling that it's going to be talked about.
I think it'll continue to be talked about for sure. Yeah, I would give it a whirl because there's definitely going to be future seasons, and it's the Game of Thrones producers or creators, so it's done pretty well.
Great.
Yeah, it's definitely enjoyable. Okay, so lots of art. Any books or any other podcasts that you're into right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always reading. I'm a voracious reader, so I've been reading a lot. What have I been reading recently?
Are you nonfiction, fiction? What?
I read mostly like fiction for fun, and then I also read things. Like I love Pema Chodron. She's a Tibetan Buddhist nun, so I really love books about like spirituality.
Yeah.
In terms of podcast, I mean, I've really been exploring like this like somatic feminist space, which has been super interesting because it offers a form of psychosocial rest, which is really just remembering that I'm a woman, and that my body's different. So something about listening to other women who are at the top of their game, and a lot of them are coaches or they own their own businesses, and how they just talk about how they take care of themselves and what really works for them. That's kind of been my bread and butter. Like, it used to be crime junkies. I used to be all about murders.
Yeah, the true crime stuff.
It used to be about like the girls being killed, and now I'm like, how do we save ourselves?
Oh my God. I love that. Yeah, no, it's true. It's like, how do we work with the cycles, with the rhythms to move things forward? Yeah, totally.
You might have you heard of Julie Louis-Dreyfus's podcast? I actually haven't listened to it much, but I keep hearing about it, and it's like winning awards and stuff. It's about listening to like older women and hearing their stories. And like why we don't listen to older people. So fascinating.
And she has the access, right? I find that her podcast is so good. It's doing a similar thing, but so much better than like the other day. My neighbor recommended I listen to a specific episode of Smartless because I love John Oliver and he was on recently. But when I get anxiety, to your point of like not wanting to consume content that overstimulates you, I can't listen to that podcast because Jason Bateman is so anxious, and then it's in my ears making me anxious. And I'm like, no, I have evolved past feeling like Jason Bateman.
Right.
Like I cannot like go put myself there on purpose.
Yeah. You're reminding me, what content I like to put in my feed is less news, because I watch the news on a daily basis and I like to get my news through those outlets. And then when I'm on Instagram, I don't feel as guilty when I'm scrolling past things that seem super important. But Theresa, to your point, you said something like, we millennials love to suffer. And I feel like that's one of my ways of trying to manage my suffering on a daily basis.
Yeah, manage your suffering. I love that. And how do we there's so many themes of like survival and flourishing here. I love it. Okay. We've talked about your big 3 a bit. So Capricorn, Aquarius. Your Venus is Scorpio. What about your Mars? What about your Mercury?
Yeah, where's your Mars? I was wondering.
Yeah.
So my Mars is in Pisces.
Okay.
And my Mercury is also in Capricorn.
Wow, my Mars is also in Pisces.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, your Mercury is also in Capricorn?
Yeah. So I have a lot of like Saturn and.
Oh God, it's so
You're
much.
just really
It's a
heavily
lot.
Capricorn.
It's so much. But that's so cute that your Mars is in Pisces.
The
I
Mars and
know.
Pisces is like very confusing to me.
It was the worst. It was the worst thing when I was trying to learn all astrology in my chart. I was like, this is the one part that I wish I could just change because
Yeah.
it feels like your strength is in your passivity. Like you're not like I like to imagine each person's Mars is like Mars is a warrior, but the costume they're wearing is wherever it's located. So if Mars is in Aries, they're a warrior with warrior's gear. But if Mars is in Pisces, they're a warrior with like the outfit of a hippie or something like that. So you have to like I don't know. For me, that's been my learning lesson. Whatever that means to you, that's how I take it.
It's no, it's been really, really confusing because I've always, again, thought like I'm this really strong, like I don't shy away from confrontation. I'm really good at advocating for myself and for others. So when I saw Mars and Pisces, it was kind of like the fuck.
Yeah.
You're truly intuitive, and this is how you deal with conflict. And I think there is like a big avoidant piece of it with Mars. And I'm finding also, I think with Capricorns, there is an avoidance of just conflict in general. So it's been really interesting figuring out like the difference between confrontation and conflict.
Yeah.
Because I'm really good at confrontation, but I'm starting to understand like, oh, I'm actually really bad at conflict because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And your Venus is in Scorpio, so of course you don't like conflict. You would much rather like kind of keep things private.
Right? It's like, don't be messy.